So welcome to our fourth and final membership gathering, talking about who we are at Willow Avenue, how we are connected to the broader Mennonite Brethren Conference, who we're trying to become in this 21st century as a group of Anabaptists. And today is just the nuts and bolts. Today is, what is this process of membership like at Willow Avenue? So the most important thing is this first page, the green one. The rest of it is sort of just because Willow Avenue is full of people who are historians and like information and that kind of thing. I'll give you the rest of it. So you'll note that there's the big red review on the membership policy document. And you can even see the file names that are down there in almost in the footer. These are documents that live in our policy manual. And so this under review part has been a live, but sometimes a little bit dormant conversation about what is membership? What do we want this to be? We started to revisit it for the briefest moment last year, but realized quickly that we had to do some other business first. And so it is a live conversation, but it's what we have. And so it's what we're working with. So we're just kind of holding things loosely. So that's why that is marked review. I didn't put that there. It was already in the policy manual. And then the last page is procedure for handling transfer requests. So if anybody is currently a member somewhere else, this is what we would do rather than the green sheet. Well, not rather than, maybe in addition to the green sheet. We need to request your membership be transferred from another church. So is anybody in that camp having a membership elsewhere? Fantastic. Recycle. So this green sheet is our process. It's, should you say, okay, I think membership is something that I want to go forward with, this is what we do. So this is a memo that goes from congregational care. It's one of our 7 commissions. And it goes to the person or persons, if it's a married couple, for example, who you would identify as a sponsor. So what we are doing is asking that person or persons to sort of be in charge of a small group that walks with you through this discernment process. You don't have to do the ask. Congregational Care Commission does the ask in terms of connecting with the sponsor. The sponsor then, with a pastor and a member of Congregational Care Commission, forms a discernment group. And that group gets together and listens to your story. You get to share your story, your faith journey with a small group. There's a whole discernment meeting outline that's that the sponsor has that they can totally ignore if they feel like it, but it's talking points. So that's where one of the suggestions is have a conversation about the confession of faith. Again, there's no check box about does Olivia believe XYZ? That's not there. It's just have a conversation. But that's up to just the discernment group, and they don't even have to do that part. So it's a very open type of conversation that is designed in a small group to allow you the sort of space and comfort of that small group to share your story.
Having been through one of those, which was a little bit of a surprise since I thought I was a mucky muck among Mennonite brethren, and I had to go through the thing. But it's a really affirming time. If you can imagine sitting like this in somebody's living room, and essentially you're sharing your story of your life and they invite you to share about your values. Of course, the same question, what keeps you coming back to this church, is part of that conversation. And while faith questions might come up, it's mostly we like to get to know you, and then I'm sure you're going to keep going. I should have waited until you got further into the process. When you are presented to the church, the sponsor will have heard your story and be able to communicate the high points to the congregation. But this is, I'm going to call it a vestige. That's not the right word, but this is one of those traditional elements of being a very high relationship, high touch, high community kind of a church that has marked us. You come through this process not because it's a gauntlet that you have to run, but because it's almost, I'm not coming up with the right metaphors, neither is it a birthing process. Not quite sure what word to use, but it is.
Thus our ambivalence about membership.
But let me also add, if you want to respond to the confession of faith question, I strongly encourage you to limit yourself either to the 3 Palmer-Becker words or the 7 things in the shared convictions of the Mennonite World Conference. Don't get into the confession of faith, because that, again, is one of these historical vestige. That is a vestige that we're setting aside. One last thing, and then I'll try to shut up for a while. Page 2 talks about the associate and affiliate member categories. And if we were to accept the proposal, it would do away with any categories and just say we're all members, complete members. But which one is it? Affiliate allows people to make a louder statement about not being Mennonite brethren. So you can join this congregation, but make it clear to everybody that you're not a Mennonite brethren person by joining as an affiliate member. I'm hoping that we can just not worry about that affiliation at all and say we're all part of Willow Avenue.
Any questions before we keep going?
That was probably more perplexing than it needed to be anyway, but that's why it's here.
Okay. So I was going to say that because the church is MB, then members must also be MB according to, or it doesn't. I mean, like official members, not.
Well, if we were going forward, I would say the church is affiliated with the Mennonite Brethren denomination. You're affiliated with this congregation.
Okay.
But purists don't want then for the next sentence to be made, you are this, so you must also be that.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
I think the affiliate category was developed to give people a way to have some sort of protest about larger concerns with MB confession, structure, polity, whatever. So I think it's sort of developed as a concession for those people to feel like I can belong, but I can still make a protest statement. And so, and that's been really important for some people throughout the years for different reasons. But it's also then become a barrier for other people in different ways. And so that's part of this proposal that we'll be coming back to, is to eliminate these categories that at one time were helpful, but they're not really helpful anymore.
Again, way too much information here, but to be a church council member, one must be a full member, not an affiliate member. And about half our church council is affiliate members. So we got to figure out what to do about that.
So basically, you're already ignoring.
One good way to do it would be to eliminate the category. But, I mean, one way to do it. I don't know if it's a good way or not a good way.
And other people are like, who needs membership? We don't need any kind of membership. So there's just a lot of conversation.
And at my urging in part, we've said, we're going to go with what we got. And because there's this process of joining us is an important one.
Well, and so this is the reason why, since I've been here for 2.5 years, why we haven't had any membership classes during this whole time is because this has been this sort of hanging, unfinished thing of what are we inviting people to join and what's the process. And we finally just got to, well, we need to go with what we have. And so that's why we haven't had a membership process for a few years, because I have been like, well, okay, that's nice. We're going to have a membership class. What are we saying that is? So that's why we're just holding it loosely. But for us, it is so much more important that it's the relationship. It's the belonging that we talked about last week that is so much more important than any of the policies, than any of the anything. So that's sort of why we're like, just hold it loosely. Other thoughts, questions? Gary, had you been about to say something a moment ago? So picking up, I think we're maybe at number 5 on this green sheet. So after the meeting with the discernment group, the sponsor will contact the moderator, Lynn
You
Jost.
probably said this, but this is addressed to the sponsor.
Yeah.
So you understand the audience here. It's
Yeah.
not you.
Yeah.
It's,
Yep, so the moderator will be contacted, that's Lynn, and there'll be an official record then that's presented at the church council meeting, so it will go into the minutes of council, and then we'll set a date for the official membership welcoming in the context of a worship service. And there are different ways I think that we can approach this. There, I think, have been a total of 15 people who've been participating in membership sessions. If one person only wanted to say, yes, I want to go forward with membership, we do that in the context of a Sunday morning. If all 15 people said, yeah, we're in, I think we'd have a special service that would only be about welcoming members, and we make it a big party. So, not that you need incentive to have a party, but so that's what that part is about. I think it will just depend on who says I'm ready at what time. So that will be just a.
if we insisted on a Sunday morning, dribble it out for 15 weeks too, which would have pluses and minuses.
Yep. So I think it's probably I don't know if it's a bylaw thing or just a practice thing, but point number 7, announcement will be placed in the bulletin 2 weeks prior to the baptism/membership day so that all persons interested can be present. On the back side, number 8, all candidates for membership who also desire baptism will meet at least once to discuss the meaning of baptism and membership. And this meeting will include those interested in baptism and members of the pastoral staff. And then finally, when membership is by transfer, which doesn't apply because none of you are, but in case anybody who's listening on the recording wants to know, there is this additional sheet that the candidate requests the letter of transfer from their home church. So,
Has membership ever been terminated?
like against someone's will?
Perhaps. Yes, I think that's where I was going with it. Because I think I've seen memberships been transferred.
Yeah.
In the time that I've been here, 1 or 2 people, in different kind of contexts.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if there's ever a moment where like, this is not really working out kind of thing. I'm just curious.
I don't know. We do have a policy that would cover what happens when. I don't know if it's happened though.
Okay.
I don't know either.
Because I know the churches, well, of course, the 2 churches where I've been, there have been scandals, or there have been, something has happened. Usually it's one of the pastors. It's something big, and so then they're asked to leave, and so then I am assuming membership with that church would be terminated if they are being asked to leave, kind of thing. So
it would have to be very extreme. I'm having a hard time imagining a scenario where we would say you can't be a part of us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, part of what is just in the DNA of this this congregation, but also this faith tradition, is reconciliation, is as to the extreme doing whatever can be done in order to bring healing and restoration and wholeness where there is brokenness. I mean, I think we even talked about it last week with the Matthew 18 passage, and when there is conflict, go first to the other person, and then do this and do that. And if none of that works, treat that one as a Gentile or tax collector, which is to say, treat that one as someone who needs to be a part of the kingdom, who needs to be embraced by the body of Christ. So, I mean, there's a theoretical something in place for it, and I don't know if it's been enacted, but I'm having a hard time imagining a scenario where we would say you can't be a part of this.
For the denomination, it's been almost only law breaking or marriage breaking.
Okay.
And that's changed over time too. Obviously, it's changed a lot. Probably the very hardest thing that the church has had to do in the last while, and it happened just before we became members, was moving a lifelong member to affiliate status because she married a woman. And that was the way we dealt with it that time. We won't do it that way again. But we did it in order to make right with the denomination, make something with the denomination. So
Remain in good standing with the denomination.
Yeah. So we have used the affiliate status for discipline, as we told the denomination, but we didn't tell ourselves that. So that's one of the reasons that all this whole membership thing is kind of driving us crazy, because we're tired of these tricky whatever.
Well, and if in practice affiliate membership is treated no differently than membership, then there would have been no actual discipline. So to the denomination, there's been a change in status, but to the church, there's no change at all, right? It's kind of what it would be.
So anyway, has it ever happened? That happened, and we're still wounded to some extent by it, and we're also trying to grow beyond it.
Yeah, there are people here who are still carry deep scars about that time in the history and how that affected people. Because in that situation, it was used as Glenn says, in a disciplinary way. So does that make you less than a full member? And just all that comes with is just so incredibly painful. And painful to the friends and family members of that person, and the ripple effects are just tremendous.
And again, not to throw the rest of the people that did it under the bus. I mean, they were doing the best they knew how to do at the moment too. So
yeah. Other questions, comments?
Over time, because I know the MB denomination connection is being discussed, has been in discussion. Certainly it appears that the articles of the Confession of Faith, those articles are not quite in line. Will there be changes formally to kind of Will Avenue, like this is our stance on these particular articles, one way or the other? Because I know, again, I've seen the conversations, but I don't think the decision has been made yet one way or the other. But certainly the church acts differently. So will there be document changes? I mean, is that something that's going to kind of be more formalized?
it's a little confusing to me, but a lot clearer to the rest of the church council members how we ought to go about this. At this point, what we would do is change affiliation first, and then we'd have the freedom to do what we actually believe on the rest of it.
Okay.
So that's the order in which we're going right now.
Okay.
And it's very hard to predict when this will happen. I'd be surprised if it's longer than 2 years from now, but I've been surprised plenty of times, so that's no guarantee. But that's sort of my private goal, is that within a couple of years we'll figure out a way out. we did a straw poll, as you probably recall. 40% of those who responded said they were ready to leave now, join the Mennonite Church. 60% of those who responded said we're willing to stay in the Mennonite Brethren Church for now. Of the total, 20% said let's just keep working to stay in, and 40% of the total said let's stop worrying about staying in. Let's neither try to get out nor try to do things that keep us in. Let's be who we are and let the denomination figure out that we don't belong there any longer. Whatever we do will not, under our time, will not be a stick it in your face kind of a thing, or we ignore you. We'll try to talk with them, and we think they want to talk to us. That's been our experience so far, is that we want to do this in a mutually agreeable way.
In good
Whatever
faith,
this
in
is.
transparent honesty and communication. Lynn and I spent a good deal of time last year having conversations at every level with denominational leaders and just being honest and saying we're having these conversations about our mission and identity. Do you have advice for us? Do you have questions for us? You know, we have tried to just be really above board with where we're at and what's going on.
We're going to try it again on the 16th and the 23rd of February with the in-house here.
Lynn and I will sort of do a review of 2019 with some major blips on the radar that happened throughout the USMB conference to just try to do some more education about, for some of us who are more connected to the larger structures, some of the concerns that we've had where, you know, most people who are part of the congregation have no clue what's going on and where some of the dis-ease is. So Lynn and I will try to do some educational sessions about that.
Quickly, when you have those conversations with denominational leaders, what's their side of the conversation? What do they say to you about kinds of things that you guys are wrestling with here?
One thing that someone said to us was that they could tolerate almost anything, but being welcoming and affirming of anyone in the LGBTQIA community. Although when we say, and I tried to say, you know, welcoming and affirming, those two words together mean something to that population of people. Because the person that I'm thinking of right now wanted us to say welcoming, affirming, and transforming. I'm like, no, you can't actually add that to that phrase. It means something. It communicates something really specific.
Can you separate welcoming and affirming? Could that be different in people's minds?
For some people, yes, but for us to be really honest, that is something that we would be moving toward, and we were told that the denomination could tolerate anything but that.
Is that the kind of the crux of the issue these days with
Sexuality is kind of a big thing in the church in general across the U.S., at least from what I've seen.
Well, and women in ministry, I find it just ridiculous that we're still even having these conversations. I'm more annoyed than anything. I'm just like, this just takes up time and energy. Just let me do my job. But that this is still a live issue. For some people, we know that it's also not even about women in ministry, but it's the gateway. It's as soon as that issue is gone, then you let in the gays, as they say. It's the one. It's the
narrow one.
Yeah, it is. The gateway, the slippery slope, whatever you want to call it. So the women in ministry issue is complex in that way. It's what's holding back that conversation. Somebody else told us, we've seen the writing on the wall for a long time. When you're ready, just get a group of people together. We'll get a group of people together and we'll iron out the details and bless each other to go our separate ways. So what else have we been told?
I keep telling myself in my own mind, oh yeah, this is important. We should get it figured out. You've been a denominational guy all your life. You better stick with it. But there's another side of me that says, let's just do what we do here and not worry about this denominational stuff. We aren't paying any attention to them saying that we can't have a pastor who's a woman. That's what we have. And so there's a part of me that just wants to say, let's do who we are a lot better. I realize that that's
I'll agree with you.
a little too pipe dreamish, but
Sorry, do you ever feel like they're pressing the issue with you in your role here?
Okay, so what I have experienced is that in our congregation, I am nothing but affirmed and supported. I'm called the pastor. As soon as I step outside our congregation, nobody can say I'm the pastor. They say, this is Audrey, she's on the pastoral staff. This is Audrey, she's at Willow Avenue. This is Audrey, she's a part of anything other than calling me the pastor. We also did make the concession of not calling me the senior or lead pastor. That's in the policy about women in ministry. Women can serve in any capacity other than senior or lead pastor. So that was the concession that we made. But even saying just pastor, which is what my title is, outside of our congregation, the conference leaders, other pastors and other people who are really supportive will go out of their way to say, this is Audrey, she's the lead pastor at Willow Avenue. And,
How many pastors are there here? Do you have?
2.
Just you and
So Whitney and I are the 2 pastoral staff.
and we've never
members.
used the word lead.
And that's also not who we are.
And I think we lied. And it was part of what we were doing in those days, is lying about stuff in order to make it work. I just don't think it was a very helpful thing. So, if I could change the conversation just a little bit, it would be to ask, so what if we were just doing what we need to do? And one of the things it would be to ask, what does it mean for us to be committed as members to this place?
Right.
And we're very traditional about that. I mean, probably every church in America thinks these things. But it means that we attend here regularly. Of course, that doesn't, we do keep attendance, but it's not so that we can give stars to perfect attendance or something. We give our gifts, which is time, talent, and treasure, money. We're committed to being faithful, generous, growing, all adjectives we should use in that regard. We're accountable to one another. So, our aim is not to kick somebody out, but when you see me behaving in a way that is not following the way of Jesus, hard as that may be for both of us, you're going to come up to me and say, you're driving like a pagan. I saw you flip her off, or whatever. Whatever that transgression might be, or I don't think we're getting along very well. What kind of signals are you sending? Let's talk this. Whatever that would be, is one of the things that I think every church would say, but certainly very much a part of what. And then the B's, or the inquiring.
Belonging, inquiring, transforming.
Yeah, or believing, behaving, and
Belonging.
There's also this element of do the Becker 3 statements make sense to you? Is this something that you also find as central to your life?
Does that make sense? The Becker 3, Jesus is the center, community is the center, reconciliation is the center.
Just wave that little pamphlet that you've got here. There it is.
And that, this is just speaking personally, but that's what attracts me to this place, is that I feel like not only is truth spoken here, but people walk the walk. And I don't think it gets any better than that.
In terms of the process of discernment, because this is a church that acts very much on its own in terms of we're in terms of like the conference, obviously, the denomination, and I mean there is a community here, and there are a lot of people here, and so there are conversations that happen here. But how else would this community then, I don't know, be guided or maybe held accountable by other communities if it's acting on its own?
Yeah.
I'm curious, and again, this is just recently looking at churches that have, and their relationships with denominations
Yeah.
or hierarchies,
Yeah.
depending on the structure of, whatever denomination it is. Because I know that sometimes certainly individuals, we can go astray in our thinking.
Sure.
The discernment piece is not there like it should be, and so I'm curious to know in terms of community then, how is that done? Kind of how do we say, okay, yes, we are on the right path, kind of by checking in with other.
Yeah, so I think it goes both ways, and we see it as going both ways. Both we need to hold the conference accountable, and we also want to be in a relationship where we can have an external check, and I think we feel like we don't have that right now. We do have friends in like Mennonite Church USA who are really supportive and really encouraging, and that's some of why that feels like a better fit for us, because that would be much more mutual. Right now it's not mutual, and it's not well balanced. But it's also why it's really not an option for us to say we're just going to become independent. That is not something that any of us in leadership support in any way.
Okay.
It is not Anabaptist to say we're just going to do it on our own and just do what we think is right in our own eyes. That is not part of what it means to be a part of a larger community. And so that's one way that we take that really seriously. But it's also part of our concern with how we are connecting with and relating to the larger conference, is feeling like we have so much critique and it's not well balanced. And so it's not, and the critique is not being received in that way that affects change and makes it be a place where we can continue to be.
Okay. So there's still an aim for some sort of denominational affiliation. We're
Absolutely.
not going off and
Nope.
being Okay, just curious about that. Thank you.
Were you going to say something, Lynn? You look like
Go
you
ahead.
captivate the
I'm
canary.
just dying to say this, what you just said about mutuality, the lack of mutuality, I really feel like defines the issue in terms that almost mandate movement. Because without mutuality, there is no relationship.
Well, we're steeped in patriarchy, and so that's partly the problem. Since I fit well in white male old patriarchy, I see it differently than Audrey does. So I have been in conversations with people that are leaders in the denomination, and they've done stuff in response to what I've said, or what we've said. So together, the church council wrote a letter protesting, and this is part of what we're going to talk about in a few weeks, but we protested the denomination's decision not to participate with other Mennonites in writing a letter to the people that are re-examining selective service to say that we're fully in. And our denomination said, no, we have to write our own letter. So we protested that. Did it change anything? It helped convince them that they definitely needed to write the letter. They might have done it anyway. More recently, I talked to the chair of the Board of Faith and Life about some stuff and talked about how the refusal to accept Audrey as pastor is part of this patriarchy thing that leads to other stuff, like the charges against the district minister of solicitation. We said, look, these things are not unconnected. He went really mad about that. And then the next day came back and said, oh, no, I think we have to talk about it. I don't think I agree with you yet, but at least need to make nice. So for me, there is reciprocity. which I understand she doesn't have. And the church has done this we've done this for 60 years. So for 60% of our congregation, they're not ready to say it isn't working yet. I think we will say that. But it's part of a sort of, well, trust me, we're walking through some rather strange and uncharted territory here. But maybe you shouldn't trust me. Maybe you should say, F it, get on with it. It's time
You're the
to.
one flipping off.
It's time to get the show on the road. So that's the ambivalence that I think we find ourselves in. And I'm trying to be transparent as well as funny, but
Thank you, Lynn. So it is noon, and there's a chili cook-off to get to. Yours truly won last year, so I've got a title to maintain. It's all. Have you been to the chili cook-off before? It's all anonymous, so you don't know who's you're voting for. It's like meat 1, meat 2, meat 3, and vegetarian 1, vegetarian 2, vegetarian 3. Anyway.
But the prettiest one will be hers.
Yeah,
and so that's what you vote for.
Just saying.
Look for the best bowl.
Yeah.
But so if you are interested in continuing and going through the process of becoming a member, please let me know. If you have thoughts about who you would like to invite to be your sponsor, I would love to be in conversation with you about that. And then Congregational Care does the ask for putting together a discernment
And
group.
if you don't know, it's okay.
That's
too.
right. If you have no idea, I'm also happy to help think of who could be a good person.
But Greg doesn't have a thing to do. He can do all of you.
Greg can't. That's right.
I was like, he brought 3 of us in. So.
And then, of course, if anybody wants to talk about baptism, we can talk about that on an individual basis as well. So, thank you all for being here. It's been a great way to spend the month of January. I'm really glad that whether you pursue membership or not, I'm glad that you are a part of us. So, thank you.